Greetings viewers. I've got something a little different for you today. With the upcoming federal election in Australia, Australians will be presented with a choice. They can either choose to vote the way they've been told to vote, or they can choose to do something rather different. You see, if Australians vote the way they've been told to vote, they will not in fact be voting for their representatives. What they will actually be doing is voting for various figures who will be working for a private corporation. How can this be? Well, you see, noble viewer, there are at least two Commonwealths of Australia. There is the Commonwealth of Australia, outlined in the framework provided by the Australian Constitution, and as you can see here, Commonwealth of Australia is written in correct English. And there is also the all-capital names Commonwealth of Australia, which is a private corporation registered on the US Securities and Exchanges Commission, with its business address being the Australian Embassy. You see, the Australian Constitution provides, among many things, the framework for common law in Australia, whereas the Commonwealth of Australia, all capitals, registered on the SEC, is operating under maritime/admiralty/commercial law. As Indigenous common law activist Mark McMurtry explains very eloquently, this battle between the common law and commercial law has been going on for a very long time. And he explains that the British admirals who invaded Australia did so in violation of their orders, their common law orders if you like, from the Crown. This battle continues to this very day, and affects all Australians regardless of ethnic background. The reason this situation continues to this day is because, as this booklet, produced by the Australian government, explains, that only something like 50% of Australians even know we have a constitution. If we want to get common law and the Australian Constitution operating in Australia properly once again, Australians need to learn how to do that. And so it is to this end that I invite you to listen to the following story.
Hello ladies and gentlemen of Australia and interested people around the world. I'm going to read a story based upon a book written by a federal politician who was once one of the few politicians we used to have that actually served the people of his electorate. This man's name was Arthur Cresby, and his book was called Your Will Be Done. In it, he shows how the Australian people can lawfully express their will to their elected representative under the Constitution. He also pointed out how to submit your will legally at election time to sack the Parliament if they ignored the will of the people. And by doing this, you are not following what a private corporation known as the Australian Electoral Commission tells you to do. As a result of our politicians ignoring our Constitution and rights protected by it, and their determination to have it removed and replaced by a Constitution written by persons or entities unknown, is another reason why I'm presenting you this story. The reason for this is because the Australian Constitution is one of a few in the world that gives the power to the people, not the politicians. Unfortunately, the people of Australia do not express their will because sadly they don't even know what is in their Constitution. I therefore present to you, for your consideration and your children's future, the story of a muddy pond called Australia. Once upon a time, the muddy pond called Australia was pristine and pure. It gave the green frogs, regardless of race or creed, a happy life with rights and freedom. To protect these rights and freedom, a group of green frogs, under spiritual guidance, wrote the Constitution to protect the green frogs from the giant black cane toad, who pretended to be a green frog so he could own the world, plus 10%, and make green frogs his slaves without them realising it. The green frogs' constitution said that the power was theirs, but sadly, the giant black cane toad was able to bribe the green frogs in the parliament into becoming toads. They constantly tricked the green frogs into giving up some of their rights and freedom by making promises and offering bribes, but failed to get them all because the majority of green frogs woke up for a moment. They rejected the idea of a republic, as they saw this would remove the constitution and all their rights. One day the internet came to the muddy pond called Australia. Suddenly the young green frogs, who always asked questions of each other because mum and dad were too busy to listen, were now able to talk to each other all over the country. They now demanded that mum and dad tell them what happened to the pristine and pure pond, now known as a muddy pond called Australia. The mums and dads of the young green frogs could only cry and say they were sorry. They were too busy working, watching TV, watching sports, and allowing themselves to be told what to think and do, especially at election time. And so they never saw the loss of the pristine and pure pond. In shock, all the young green frogs via the internet decided they would fix the muddy pond called Australia. The young green frogs did a Google search and found that some old green frogs have been trying to save the muddy pond called Australia. So they carefully read all that was on www.saveoz.info. They found it contained a book written by a green frog who refused to become a toad. His name was Arthur Cresby, and the book is called Your Will Be Done. It showed the young green frogs what to do. The young green frogs then told their parents and friends that in an election, if they put a line for all the names on the ballot paper, including the square, and wrote on it, "None of these candidates meets my requirements," and initialed it using an ink pen texter or texter, so the toads can't rub it out. They were signifying that they wanted none of the toads on the paper and wanted a new election with all new green frogs. The sacked toads couldn't apply again for the job. The new green frogs would fix the muddy pond called Australia and fervently promised in writing to never become a toad or do the bidding of the great black cane toad. They would only abide by the will of the green frogs because they saw all the green frogs had learnt how to exercise their power under the Constitution and to think for themselves. Overnight, a muddy pond called Australia was transformed back into the country it used to be, and the toads were desperately trying to become green frogs again in order to survive. An alternate method, for those of you who wish to vote for an independent but no one else, you can legally put one against their name and then using a black biro so they can't erase anything, and rule a line through the names and boxes of the other candidates, denying them preferences. It's important that it goes through the name and the box. This is a valid vote and cannot be rejected as informal, as it has never been challenged in a High Court of Australia. Just the same as the booklet, Your Will Be Done, has never been challenged in any of our courts. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let's all work together and save Australia and turn it back into the pristine and pure place it used to be where everyone, no matter what race or creed they are, can live happily together. Thank you.
Yes, people, it really is that simple. And for those of you who are tempted to think that it's too simple, consider this. You don't need to understand the complexities of an automobile in order to drive one. You don't need to understand the complexities of electronic circuitry in order to switch on your television. You don't need to understand the complexities of the internet, both its software and its hardware, in order to use it. So, to use a metaphor, once Australians learn to press the right pedals, turn the right wheels, and enter the correct URL into their internet browsers, the complexities will then sort themselves out. Catch you later.